Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girirvaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Suranandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaja Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Bhavan Subhadaraja Kachaya. Astatara Satasi Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki Jai. Go Premanande! This morning we'll continue with Chaitanya Charitamrita and a little Chaitanya Bhagavat mixed in. We're discussing the bhava, the consciousness of Maharaj Prataparuja, the chief executive. A far cry from the heads of state we have today. And we'll discuss a little bit about how that can be so. Because every human being, generally speaking, longs to live in a beneficial social setting. So the challenge of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, is that when you look at the current standard of so-called human civilization, you actually don't have a real human civilization. So when you hear about Maharaja Prataparuja, You're actually hearing about the proper standard of a leader of human society, someone who is attuned to the non-material dimensions. More than that, someone who actually has experience of the deepest spiritual realities. And that is what Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is about. It's the graduate study to even Srimad Bhagavatam. It's showing you the activities of the spirit soul in perfection. You see, unless you have a firm grasp, a firm understanding of spiritual variegatedness, the dynamics of spiritual existence, the tastes, the qualities, the forms, the activities, you are not going to slacken your grip on material activities. Because we desperately want tastes. We desperately want activities. We desperately want relationships. Unless you have some understanding and developed experience that all that is there in perfection in the ultimate source, you're not going to be very attached to the ultimate source, no matter what you label that ultimate source. God, the supreme being, the creator, the maintainer, whatever. And yes, people also say the whatever. Unless you have specific knowledge and developing experience of spiritual variegatedness, you will not for long avoid seeking pleasure, tastes, activities, relationships in the material energy. So this is the superlative contribution of the Bhakti text. And of course, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself demonstrating the Bhakti experience. An example you've often heard is that if a little child is struggling to write the alphabet, and then the teacher comes along and demonstrates, well, this is how you do it. Similarly, Krishna makes his offer very clear in Bhagavad Gita. He explains himself. He gives you the process for verifying what he says. Maya sakta manabhata yogam yunjan barasraya. Asamsayam samagram mam yata gyasasi tachanu. Just listen, he tells Arjuna. I'm going to teach you the science by which you can understand me in full consciousness of me. You can connect your consciousness to mine. You'll know everything, there won't be any doubt. Tachanu, just listen. So this is the gateway to beginning spiritual life, and then it's always the conduit for deepening your spiritual life. Just listen. But listen to whom? You have to know who you're listening to. Because sound vibration will bury you deeper in material existence, and sound vibration can free you from material existence and attach you to the spiritual world. We're going to try to appreciate the consciousness of Maharaja Prachaparuta, especially his determination. He wasn't going to give up for anything. We discussed in our previous class how Prachaparuta was asking Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, if you know that this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is such an inconceivably spiritual personality, why did you let him go to South India? Why didn't you detain him? And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, look, he's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. totally independent. What can be done? This is the way his pastimes are. This is the way his Leela is. Still, I tried. But because he is indeed independent, what could I do? So then he engages, remember? He engages Prataparudra in devotional service. He says, Mahaprabhu needs a place to stay that's quiet and peaceful when he returns to Jagannath Puri from South India. And the chief executive says, I immediately know just the place. So he's doing devotional service. You may recall in Bhagavad Gita, Evam parampara praptam imam rajasaya vidu. Krishna says, this science is meant, this spiritual science is meant for the chief executives, the heads of state. As you heard last night, we're distributing knowledge of Bhagavad Gita far and wide to anyone and everyone. You heard some of the descriptions last night of the persons who are taking Bhagavad Gita. But don't be blind to the reality, as stated in Bhagavad Gita itself, that this science is meant for the heads of state. Why? Because the heads of state are supposed to give their citizens protection. Protection against what? That's the question. Protection against lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, madness. Instead, what you have is a society that fully embraces those things. The more greedy, lusty, and illusioned you are, the better. This is a consumer society. We just want you to work and spend. If you stop spending money, the whole system collapses. Just like in the USA after the 9/11, people were in shock. So the president urged them, get into it, patriotic spending. Spend some money, save human civilization. Don't let the consumer society collapse. So the question is, what are we protecting the citizens from? According to Bhagavad Gita, the first priority of the chief executive is to protect the citizens from uncontrolled senses, giving them that knowledge. And then, with that kind of knowledge, the heads of state can properly arrange for their citizens. So here you see Prataparudra, who was a chief executive with huge responsibility, but he is fully focused on getting the biggest spiritual benefits for the citizens. As we explained the other day, all these personalities that you read about in Chaitanya Charitamrita are there in the mundane historical record, but you won't find in the mundane historical record all this about that we're going to discuss about Prataparudra's Krishna consciousness. That doesn't show up in the mundane historical record. But there are so many references to Prataparudra existing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu existing, but it just says ordinary people. So we're going to try to appreciate the determination of Prataparudra Maharaj. And try to seek a bit of that for ourselves. We can just get one drop of his determination. Our spiritual life is successful. So we'll chant a verse from Manjula Lila chapter 11, text 47. This is a verse describing Lord Chaitanya's being the object of Prataparudra's determination. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda.
Adarshaniyanapi nitya jatin.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Samvikshase hanta tatapi no mam.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Mareka varjam kripayishyati te.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Niniya kim so vatatara deva.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Adarshaniyanapi nitya jatin.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Samvikshase hanta tatapi no mam.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Mareka varjam kripayishyati te.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Niniya kim so vatatara deva.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Adarshaniyanapi nitya jatin.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Samvikshase hanta tatapi no mam.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Mareka varjam kripayishyati te.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Niniya kim so vatatara deva.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Vikshate hanta tathapi no mam.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Manekavajam kripayashyati te.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Ninikim sovatatara devaha.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva. Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim. Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam. Marekarajam kripayishyati te. Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Marekarajam kripayishyati te.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Vaishnavis.
Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim. Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam. Marekarajam kripayishyati te. Nirniya kimso vatatara deva. Adashaniyanaphi nityjatim. Samvikshate hanta tatapi no mam. Marekarajam kripayishyati te. Nirniya kimso vatatara deva.
Adarshaniya upon those who are unfit to be seen. Api, although, Nichajati, the lower class of men, Samdikshate, puts his merciful glance, Hanta, alas, Tata, Api, still, Na'u, not, Mam, upon me, Mat, myself, Eka, alone, Varjam, rejecting, Kriprayashati, he will bestow his mercy. Iti, thus, Niniya, deciding, Kim, whether, Sa, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Avatatara, has descended. Deva, the Supreme Personality of God. Translation. Alas, has Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his advent deciding that he will deliver all others with the exception of me? He bestows his merciful glance upon many lower class men who are usually not even to be seen. Repeat. Alas, has Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his advent, deciding that he will deliver all others, with the exception of me. He bestows his merciful glance upon many lower class men who are usually not even to be seen. Om Gyanantimanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasana Gaurabhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Adarshaniyan, upon those who are unfit to be seen. Nicha Jatin, the lower class of men. Well, is this about some kind of socioeconomic status? Persons who don't have any money, the homeless, the jobless. Does that make someone lower class and unfit to be seen according to the standard you're hearing in Chaitanya Charitamrita? No. Everything depends on behavior in terms of the ability to control the mind and senses and the purity of the behavior, which indicates the purity of the consciousness. That determines whether you are considered lower class or upper class. So King Prataparudra is talking about Adarshaniyan, mercy for those who are unfit to be seen. Remember in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna doesn't want to fight, doesn't want to do his duty. And remember, Krishna is not urging him to fight in some kind of oil war or for natural resources. Titanium or something like that, uranium. No. Arjuna was not just an ordinary citizen conscripted into the army. By propensity and by profession, he's a military man. And so Krishna is reminding him of the sacred code of honor for a Vedic military man, which is to protect the innocent, to uphold justice. And so those whom Arjuna was fighting against, or was intended to fight against, were plunderers, bandits, although they're in the guise of royalty. And they were not only terrorizing the people in general, but they were even attacking Arjuna's family, trying to burn down the house with Arjuna's family inside, administering poison. So from all these angles, Krishna is urging Arjuna, you have to do your duty. You're a military man. You have to stand up for the innocent as well as stand up for yourself, your family. But as you know, and we can't hear it enough, Arjuna in the first chapter was overwhelmed with body identification. Yes, I know that the other side is so rapacious, they're such plunderers, but we have some extended kinship relationship with them. Not like brother, sister, but extended family. These days, of course, we don't even know what primary family relationships are, but in the time of this scenario from Bhagavad Gita, everyone understood what your immediate family circle is, but then there was the extended family, which was also taken very seriously. Second cousins, third cousins, so on and so forth. So this is why Arjuna was in such a panic. He was being soft-hearted. We're related, although extended, in an extended relationship. We're related to these persons on the other side. Some of them have been my friends. Some of them have been my military teachers. I can't do this. And so this is why the first chapter is also known as the Yoga of Despair. Arjuna is basically having a psychological breakdown. I don't see any good options. When you reach that point in life in which all your options look bleak, then you're desperate. Then you're full of despair. But of course, Arjuna is going to turn to Krishna and say, no more friendship-based conversation. Now you are the instructor, I'm your disciple. What do you say? And that's when Bhagavad Gita takes off, so to speak, when Arjuna changes from just acting as Krishna's friend to acting as Krishna's student. So Krishna immediately chastises Arjuna, corrects him. You are speaking big words about nonviolence, peace, tranquility, but you're actually sounding very unintelligent, which, as you know, is Krishna's way of saying you're a fool. He said, you're not sounding very intelligent. You're not sounding like someone who's from a high class. You're sounding like someone from a low class. Now, is Krishna making material body distinctions? No, he's referring to behavior. Arjuna, you're not demonstrating spiritually progressive qualities. You're talking like someone who's ignorant, someone who doesn't understand the difference between the body and the self. So Krishna is lashing Arjuna on two levels, and this is what some persons get confused about when they read Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is lashing him on the material level, the Varnashram Dharma level, that you have your sacred duty as a Vedic administrator warrior, and you're not doing that. And then, of course, Krishna's lashing him on the spiritual level. You're my spiritual part. You're meant to act in harmony with me. So this is Bhagavad Gita. It's going on two levels. It's showing you how a real material human society operates, and then, of course, it's showing you what's beyond the material perspective. So Krishna is chastising Arjuna that you're not living material life properly. Innocent people are being attacked. Your own family is being attacked. You're the most competent military general, and here you are talking about peace. Get real. Arjuna presented very nice arguments, didn't he? If we engage in this battle, someone's going to get hurt. And if we win, that means the other side loses, and we have an extended kinship relationship with them. How are we going to celebrate victory when our opponents are dead and they're related to us? Sounds good, doesn't it? Furthermore, the military men on the opposing side, if we win, they'll be dead. And what about their wives and their children? What are the women going to do without their husbands? Of course, these days, with a husband or wife, hey, no problem. Who's next in line? Or who's been in the shadows all the time anyway? So, Arjuna has his material considerations, which are actually very elevated. And they show his soft-heartedness. But Krishna's calling him a fool. And this is what even the most erudite academics, mundane scholars of today can't understand. Why is Krishna rejecting Arjuna's presentation of peace? Just give peace a chance. But Krishna's telling him, you are a Vedic administrator, warrior. What's this non-violence talk? When necessary, you have to protect the innocent. Now, try to understand, especially our newer devotees, but still it's so important for our older devotees to hear this again and again. The Bhagavad Gita is for real. It seems like Krishna's rejecting peace. But no, who is Krishna talking to? He's not talking to the general population that everyone should bear arms and get out there and fight. He's talking to a professional military class. In the Battle of Kurukshetra, where were the ordinary people? Where were the citizens? Far away. The battle took place in an isolated area. Even today, in India, you'll see Kurukshetra is out in the middle of nowhere. But what does war mean today? Terrorize the women and children, which from the Vedic standards is considered totally abominable. So you have to understand why Krishna is telling Arjuna, you must fight and stop this peace-talking nonsense. Arjuna's army, the army on the other side, is not full of ordinary citizens drafted or conscripted into the army. No, the citizens have nothing to do with it. This is a battle between a professional military class. So Krishna tells Arjuna, you're not acting in a high-class way. Does that mean Arjuna doesn't have enough money? Or, like, what university did you go to, Arjuna? No, high class means the qualities of someone who knows what their duty is materially and also knows what their duty is spiritually. Someone who's progressive, someone who knows how to live in the material world so that their spiritual depth increases. That's the real definition of an Aryan. Not someone who was born in a certain place or someone who looks physically a certain way. Aryan means someone who understands spiritual values. So back to Maharaj Prataparudra and his consciousness. He's talking about adarshaniyan, upon those who are unfit to be seen. He's considering himself to be low class in spite of his position, in spite of his power, in spite of his wealth. He's saying, I'm low class. So what about Lord Chaitanya? Has he descended to deliver all the low-class persons, including me, but not me? All the persons like me, but he's ignoring me. And I'm certainly low class. Look at my consciousness. And then he makes a pragmatic evaluation of what's going on. He bestows his merciful glance upon many lower class men who are usually not even to be seen. So this is an interesting angle. Not to be seen. We'll go back to that, because Lord Chaitanya is going to demonstrate that principle in a most strict way. Because Lord Chaitanya always wanted to demonstrate the behavior of a super renounced sannyasi. But his followers didn't want him to do that. They said, why? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why does he have to undergo austerities? So there was always this bit of a loving tussle between Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Lord Chaitanya wanted to be super austere, and his associates were wanting him to minimize his austerities. What do you need to do austerities for? You are the supreme enjoyer. But Lord Chaitanya says, no, don't call me the supreme enjoyer. I'm just a devotee. So this loving tension is going on throughout Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we'll go to the next verse and then go backwards a bit. Maharaj Prataparudra continued, if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is determined not to see me, then I am determined to give up my life if I do not see him. Purport. A devotee with Maharaj Prataparudra's determination will certainly be victorious in advancing in Krishna consciousness. Sri Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha didha vrataha. Namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. These are the symptoms of a Mahatma engaged in the Lord's service in full Krishna consciousness. Thus, Maharaj Prataparudra's determination is very much exalted and is called Jidhavrata. You remember that? Jidhavrata, Bhagavad Gita also. Bhajante Mam, Jidhavrata, worshiping me with determination. Yatatascha Jidhavrata. This is what we want to focus on. Where am I going to get the determination to withstand the attacks of hallucinity? Continue the purport. Because of this determination, he was finally able to receive Lord Chaitanya's direct mercy. So this is Prataparudra's sincere expression of his bhakti. If I don't get the darshan of Mahaprabhu, I'm either going to give up my life, or as you hear, I'm going to give up my post. Both were considered to be disastrous because he was such a benign chief executive, always serving the sadhus. So now, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who's an intimate friend and associate of Lord Chaitanya, is going to make an appeal to Lord Chaitanya. Let the king have a darshan, let the king have an audience with you. So he asked Mahaprabhu, please give me permission to submit a statement without any fear. He knows this is going to be a tough one. So what is that statement? And what was Mahaprabhu's response to that first proffer? He said, you can speak freely, don't be fearsome, but I'll decide if your statement is suitable or not, and whether or not I accept it. If it's not suitable, I'll reject it. So at least Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who knew he's about to ask for something quite huge, he knows he has a chance to present something without fear. This is what everyone would like when they have something difficult on their mind. They like to present it without fear. And so all you have to do is follow in the footsteps of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and say, if you don't mind, I'd like to say something. I'd like to present something without fear of repercussion. I'd like you to consider something. So you see how tasteful and artful Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is. Everything among sadhus has class. Class meaning fine manners, fine mannerisms. Not simply, hey, I want to tell you something. And as they say, in your face. No, he's being very delicate, especially he's dealing with Lord Chaitanya. May I speak without fear? And Lord Chaitanya says, you indeed may speak without fear. Make your presentation, but bear in mind, I may accept it, I may reject it. So, how does Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya begin? You see, there is this person, Prachaparudra, a king. He's very anxious to meet you, and he requests your permission that he can meet you. What was Mahaprabhu's reaction? Immediately covered his ears. Did you say king? I didn't hear that. Now bear in mind, as we heard before, that Prachaparudra had already been warned by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that Lord Chaitanya doesn't see kings even in dreams. But because Prachaparudra is such an abnormal devotee, all the other devotees they're pulling for him. They're supporting him, even though they know that Mahaprabhu is very strict. So yes, the expected reaction happened. Mahaprabhu covers his ears and says, my dear Sarvabhauma, why are you requesting such an undesirable thing from me? And then Lord Chaitanya takes what you would consider the hard line. I'm in the renounced order. I don't meet with kings or women. To meet with either would be like drinking poison. So you say, well, this sounds very discouraging. But you have to understand that Lord Chaitanya is setting a super strict standard, and you have to understand what he's referring to. Because usually kings are involved, chief executives, any politician is involved with power, influence, sense gratification, dividing and conquering, enemies, friends. And so a sadhu doesn't get involved with all that. A saintly person doesn't get involved in all that. Especially a saintly person in the classic renounced order. And he said, well, what about women? Does he have a complex against women? When the Shastra mentions women, it means looking at anything in the spirit of material enjoyment. So that means, generally speaking, for the women, the man is a woman, meaning object of enjoyment. So you have to understand the depths of this and not be put off by what seems to be old-fashioned and outmoded. In the case of Lord Chaitanya, he's speaking about the potential objects of material enjoyment that would come his way. That may be different for you. For a woman, it would be different. She would look upon, generally speaking, of course there are so many variations these days, but she would look on the man as the woman, the object of enjoyment. So you get it? So Lord Chaitanya is saying, basically, to see anyone and associate with anyone with the spirit of material enjoyment is just like drinking poison. And you'll see that in the next verse, the famous verse, Niskinchanasya Bhagavat Bhajanon Mukasya. Param Param Jigamesur Bhavasagarasya. Sandarshanam Vishainam Atayoshitam Cha Ha Hanta Hanta Vishabhakshanatopya Sadhu. Lord Chaitanya speaks this verse to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. For a person seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engage in sense gratification, or seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly. So you look in the word for words and you see Sandarshana. The seeing for some material purpose. Otherwise, what are we all supposed to do around here? Just I have to blank out half the room here. Oh my God, I can't see this. But the point is seeing them for material purposes. Whether the woman is looking on the man or the man is looking on the woman, but the Shastra just generalizes the women. But when you go deeper into the subject matter, you find out that the whole point is objects of material enjoyment. Otherwise, if we're going to take the strictest way of understanding what Lord Chaitanya says, what are we doing here? We've got to walk around with a blindfold. But we have to change our consciousness. And bear in mind, Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating how to be super strict. Srila Prabhupada was once asked about this. Well, didn't Lord Chaitanya say this, or didn't he say that, and didn't he... And what was Prabhupada's response? He said, I'm not Lord Chaitanya. I need all the help I can get. So therefore, we're an equal opportunity employer here. We need all the help we can get. But just understand that Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating the super strict standard in a society that was 100 times more strict than what we have now. So he goes on to say to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya how I can't do this. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya says very tactfully, my dear Lord, what you have said is correct. But this king is not an ordinary chief executive. He's a great devotee, and he's a Jagannath Sevaka, servant of Lord Jagannath. How does the dialogue proceed? What does Lord Chaitanya reply? It's correct. This shows you a just refined way of conversation. Each one said, well, that part is correct, but the other one said, yes, that's correct, but far different from the way things go on today. Now, I'm wrong and you're right, or you're right, I'm right and you're wrong, and who has the most money, the deepest pockets to get the best lawyer? So Mahaprabhu replies, although it is correct that the king is a great devotee, he's still to be considered a venomous snake. Sounds very fanatical, doesn't it? And then he gives an example, which could put you off if you don't understand the depths of what's going on. He says, great devotee, but he's a chief executive, therefore a snake. Similarly, a woman may be made of wood. It may just be a wooden form of a woman, but one becomes agitated just by touching the wooden form. So, just a wooden form, just a great devotee, but king. So this is Lord Chaitanya demonstrating very strict principles, because he wanted to do that. Whereas his associates were always trying to get him to slacken a bit. You don't have to be so austere. But Lord Chaitanya wanted to do that. And he furthermore gives the example of a serpent, that even though you just see the shadow or form of a serpent, it's not biting you, still you're fearful. I remember once I saw a cobra, and I was walking along a path in the bush. This is in the Philippines, and all of a sudden a cobra emerges from the bush, and I was shocked at how fast they move. The cobra had its head up high, and it was crossing the path where I was walking on. And I didn't know what to do. I just said, Hare Krishna. And the serpent looks at me, sticks out his tongue. Meanwhile, I had taken off running the other way. Fortunately, the cobra didn't follow me, because you don't understand how fast they can move. You think they've got no legs? But they can catch you. Fortunately, the cobra didn't chase me. But I'll never forget that scene. The cobra gave me such a hideous look. I just instinctively said, Hare Krishna. He stuck out his tongue. So Lord Chaitanya is saying that just like you become frightened immediately by seeing a live serpent, similarly, someone who is endeavoring for self-realization should similarly fear a materialistic person and a woman. Indeed, he should not even glance at their bodily features. So again, you have to understand that a basic principle of a real human society is some kind of separation between the genders. Obviously, we can't do the extremes, you might say, that Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating. But there has to be some kind of distinction in terms of letting everyone have a peaceful mind. If everyone is sitting on each other's laps, let's face it, self-realization is not going to be possible. We were talking the other day how even in terms of what was considered a high-class education, up until a certain point in the 60s, the elitist schools were all men or all women, because there was some depraved notion that students will focus on their studies more when the opposite sex is not there. But now that understanding is considered primitive. But we can't get around the fact that there has to be some distinction in terms of some division, so everyone can have a peaceful mind. This doesn't, that there's some division doesn't mean one is better than the other. It just means in order for both genders to function properly, there needs to be some protocols. Not doing that is primitive. So what Lord Chaitanya is doing is giving you insight into a very sophisticated society in which everyone is cared for, and that there are guidelines, protocols, manners to keep everyone in peaceful, clean consciousness on the road to self-realization. So this is a little difficult for persons to understand today, because they're growing up in a society today which just has everything but self-realization as its goal. Just be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, it'll all work out. But a real human society recognizes that there are material influences of illusion, and how do you minimize those influences so everyone can express their human right for self-realization and enlightenment. Everyone has a right to have favorable circumstances for spiritual development. And that can't happen if there's no distinction in terms of protocol between the men and the women. Just like right now, if we just had class, okay guys, just all merge together. What's this with the ladies on this side, the men on that side? Come on over. Men, just choose your spot over there. What do you think? Would the minds be peaceful? So we have some basic distinction in terms of protocols. Doesn't mean higher or lower. It means just how to keep peace of mind so that self-realization is your number one goal. And you're not going to achieve that goal without some protocols. And having protocols in terms of gender behavior is part of a real human society. But unfortunately, some persons turn this into a debate about who is higher, who is lower, and some persons push things in that way. But there's a reason behind the system. It's for social sanity. As I was saying the other day, I went to an all boys prep school, and there's just 175 boys. The girls were far away in an all-girls school, 2-hour drive away. Oh, the boys hated it. We hated it. We We were teenagers, you know. Every 3 months, they would have what's called a mixer. The girls from the all-girls school would board a bus and bring them to the all-boys school for an evening dance. And the evening dance meant they came in at 4 o'clock and they left by 10 o'clock p.m. And the dance happened in the dining room. They cleared away all the chairs and tables, and there were faculty members posted everywhere to make sure no one is sneaking off into the forest. Oh, the boys hated it. The girls hated it too. But the understanding was that you are meant to focus on your studies. Of course, it's all out the window now. So my point is that you can have a glimpse, even by looking at Western society of 50 years ago, you have a glimpse into social sanity. There's no social sanity now. So now I hope you can understand better why Lord Chaitanya is demonstrating that classic orthodox pose. He's making you think, what is the reason behind any lesser protocols? He's showing you the protocol to the umpteenth degree. And he feels that's the best thing to do. His followers sort of didn't agree. He may be a chief executive, but he's a devotee. He's a great devotee of Lord Jagannath. So this is going to go back and forth, on and on and on and on. So hearing Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's petition, what's the conclusion? Lord Chaitanya says, if you keep talking like this, you'll never see me again. Don't ever let such a request come from your mouth. What are you going to say to that? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was afraid and went home. But while home, he began to meditate on the situation. See, all the devotees were so impressed by Maharaj Prataparudra. They knew he's a great devotee. They couldn't get that out of their mind. So he went home afraid, but still he was meditating. This shows you, you're starting to see, if you get the mercy of a devotee, Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada, Yasya prasada nagati gatopi. If you please the devotee of Krishna, Krishna becomes more pleased. So this is Maharaj Prataparudra's, you might say, saving grace. Lord Chaitanya refused to see him. I don't see politicians. But the devotees continue to pull for Maharaj Prataparudra. So now Prataparudra has arrived in Puri. He stayed nearby in a place called Katak. And remember, if you know Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya met Ramananda Roy in South India, during the tour of South India, he requested Ramananda Roy retire from government, because Ramananda Roy was like a provincial governor under Prataparudra. Retire! Come to Jagannath Puri, come stay with me, we'll talk about Krishna night and day. So indeed, Ramananda Roy did that and showed up in Jagannath Puri. And he describes how, he said, I went to Prataparudra, my boss, and I told him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has requested that I retire from service, your service. And he's described that Prataparudra was very happy to hear Very different from what happened to Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami when they actually didn't even tell the Nawab, the Muslim ruler that they were working under in positions as high as like prime minister. They just didn't show up. And when the Nawab found out, he was very angry because he depended on Rupa and Sanatana. They were so brilliant. And so his reaction was very negative. In fact, he put Sanatana Goswami in jail. But Prataparudra is so pleased to hear, oh, by all means take this opportunity. So we read that. This is Ramananda Roy speaking about his interaction with Prataparudra. I said, Your Majesty, I am now not willing to engage in political affairs. I only desire to stay at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Please give me permission. What happened next? Just by Prataparudra hearing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's name, he went into ecstasy. What kind of chief executive is this? He immediately jumped off his throne and embraced Ramananda Roy. Just by hearing the name of Lord Chaitanya. He's immediately overwhelmed by ecstatic love. So what did he do then? He immediately said, you retire and I'll give you full salary, just like you were making before. Just as you were making before, even though you're going to fully stop your political affairs under me and retire completely, I give you full salary. What kind of boss is that? My youngest brother, the Toyota brother, I've heard through the family grapevine, he's 61, he's trying to retire. Hope he doesn't hear this. Sometimes my family members, they snoop on YouTube. So he's 61, and he's the big shot in the global world of Toyota. So much so that the head of the Toyota dynasty in Japan said that anything outside Japan, that's his affair of the whole world of Toyota. So, but he wants to retire. My brother wants to retire. But they don't let you go so easily in the corporate world if you're very effective. They load you up with appreciation. I said, well, if the Japanese want you so much, don't they increase your salary in such a way that you can't say no? He said, that's not the Japanese way. They just pile honor upon you. Honor upon honor upon honor. So much so that you begin to realize the honor, the stature is more important than the money. He gets enough money. But he wants to retire. But they're not going to let him go. So just see, Ramananda Roy is such an effective governor, but Prataparudra won't let him, Prataparudra is going to let him go. In fact, Prataparudra just hears the name of Lord Chaitanya and goes into ecstasy. And so he grants Ramananda Roy full retirement. And this is what Ramananda Roy is reporting to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He reports that Prataparudra told him, very humbly, I am most fallen and abominable. I am unfit to receive an interview with Lord Chaitanya. One's life is successful if one engages in his service. And then Prataparudra says, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna. He's Brajendra Nandana, the son of Maharaja Nanda. He's very merciful, and I hope in a future birth, he'll allow me an interview. This is determination. Maybe in a future birth. So what is Ramananda Roy's conclusion to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And remember, Ramananda Roy is a most intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya. He tells Lord Chaitanya, I don't think there's even a fraction of Maharaj Prataparudra's loving devotion in me. So this is Ramananda Roy, who's such an intimate associate, just like Srup Damodar. But he's telling Lord Chaitanya, I don't have a fraction of what this devotee has. This is the world of transcendental dealings. So what was Lord Chaitanya's conclusion? Hearing all that? My dear Ramananda Roy, you're the foremost of all devotees. Therefore, whoever loves you is certainly a very fortunate person. And then Lord Chaitanya drops a big hint. Because the king has shown so much love for you, Lord Krishna will certainly accept him. And then we hear how Krishna is more favorably inclined to a devotee of the devotee than to someone who says, I'm directly your devotee. So Prabhupada writes in the purport about Prataparudra's behavior to Ramananda Roy. This was very much appreciated by Lord Chaitanya, and this confirms the fact that the Lord is more pleased when one serves the servant of the Lord. In ordinary parlance, it is said, if you love me, love my dog. To approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to go through his confidential servant. This is the method. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu clearly says, because the king loves you, Ramananda Roy, he is very fortunate. Krishna will certainly accept him due to his love for you. So that's Mahaprabhu giving a premonition. But still, he's going to be steadfast and say, I don't want to see him, I don't want to see him. But he's giving a hint. Something will be possible. So what's an example of how something is possible? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya reported to Prataparudra, no way, it's not going to happen. But let's think of a way how this can be done. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told him that you just want a glimpse of him. You can do this when he's absorbed in kirtan. And when he's absorbed in kirtan, he'll be in such ecstasy, he won't know who's around him. So you can be there and get your darshan, get your audience. So Prataparudra agreed. This is very strategic. Yes, we'll do that. So he got word, because Lord Chaitanya would dance in ecstasy in 3 places in Puri. In the Jagannath Puri temple, as soon as the curtains opened, he was right there, chanting and dancing, embracing people and soaking them with his tears. He would also dance on the shore of the ocean, and he would dance at the home of Kasi Mishra. So it was just a matter of strategic arrangement for King Prataparudra to catch a darshan somewhere, especially catch an audience somewhere, especially with the arrangements of the inner circle devotees. So he received word. Mahaprabhu is dancing. He's lost in ecstasy. So Prataparudra changed his clothes from a royal dress. He looked incognito, and he went to the edge of the circle in which Mahaprabhu was dancing in ecstasy. Such a sight. He saw the tears shooting from Lord Chaitanya's eyes, soaking everyone. He saw this Lord Chaitanya would fall on the ground in dancing in kirtan with such force that everyone was frightened. Oh my goodness, he must be hurt. And then he would get up and dance more. He would roar so loudly, Krishna, Krishna, that Prataparudra had to cover his ears. You know, sometimes in our kirtans, if you got one of those loudness meters on your phone, you don't know what to do. But Prataparudra just covered his ears. So he's watching all this. The water is pouring from Mahaprabhu's nose, saliva coming from his mouth, drenching his whole body with his own saliva. His body is dust covered because he's falling on the ground and picking himself up again. So his body is covered with dust, saliva, and nose water. So Prataparudra was fully satisfied seeing this. And unlimitedly satisfied. We don't know what it's like to be unlimitedly satisfied. We think good satisfaction is when you feel good for a few moments and then it's gone. Well, still, for a few moments I was satisfied. That's not satisfaction. But this is the brand that a consumer society is making you dedicate your life to. Few seconds of so-called satisfaction, and then what happens? Your material desires come back even more. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dusparena, burns like fire and never satisfied. If you're smart enough to figure that out, you save yourself a lot of trouble. So Prataparudra is unlimitedly satisfied by that sight that he's seen of Lord Chaitanya dancing in ecstasy in kirtan. But he had a doubt. Sometimes we're afraid of doubts. Oh no. What to do? But as you read in the third canto of Bhagavatam, doubting is the sign of intelligence until you're in contact with a source that can satisfy your doubt, an authorized source. Then it's no longer intelligent to be doubtful. But preliminary doubting is a sign of intelligence. So Prataparudra had a doubt. But it was a doubt that led him to get more mercy from Lord Chaitanya. He was wondering, because up until this point, he was thinking evidently that Lord Chaitanya is the greatest of the great devotees. He didn't know that Lord Chaitanya is the same as Prataparudra's beloved Lord Jagannath. He didn't know that. He didn't know he's the full impact or import of Mahaprabhu being Krishna himself. But he was relishing, this is the greatest devotee, look at this ecstasy. But he was wondering about the body the body drenched with saliva and water from the nose and covered with dust. Well, this is a great devotee, okay, but he left it at that. So how is it that his doubt could lead to even more mercy? Because he was doubtful in the proper way. I don't know about this. I can't understand it fully. Which is honest. I can't understand it. He wasn't rejecting, but just such ecstasy. But if you know anything about real cleanliness, you know, your body's soaked with your own saliva. Now, generally, that's not considered very clean. And you know what comes out of your nose. It's all over your body. And there's dust all over your body because you're rolling in the dust. So Prataparudra was wondering about that. You would wonder too. So that night he had a dream of Lord Jagannath appearing to him. And Lord Jagannath was covered with dust, saliva, and nose water. And so Prataparudra says to Lord Jagannath, I don't understand this, but I just want to touch your feet. And Lord Jagannath said, "You want to touch my feet? Look at me, I'm covered with my own saliva, nose water, and dust. Why do you want to touch me?" And then suddenly, in his dream, Prataparudra saw, instead of Lord Jagannath, he saw Lord Chaitanya, covered with dust, nose water, and saliva. And Lord Chaitanya said, "You don't want to touch me, do you?" And King Prataparudra, when he woke up, he got the point. He understood that Lord Chaitanya is not just a devotee, but he's Lord Jagannath, he's Krishna himself. So this is the kind of chief executive that was in charge. These days we'd be happy just to have a chief executive who fully understands he or she is not the body. Who has some understanding of what is dharma, the intrinsic characteristic of the living being. And who knows how to give real protection to the citizens, how to protect them from material desires which will never be fulfilled. But you don't have that today. This is the age of darkness. What do you have? The highest principle in society is considered economic growth. There must be economic growth, otherwise everything's a failure. Without economic growth, we're told, there'll be social instability, there'll be violence, there'll be declining living standards. Oh my God, declining living standards. All these things will be brought about unless we keep emphasizing economic growth. More, more, more. You know the example from the Upanishads, quoted in Bhagavad Gita purports, about the two birds on the tree, yes? Dva suparna sayuja sakaya. There are two birds on the tree of the body. One is the eating bird, the other is the witness bird. This example is referring to the Atma, the spirit soul, and the Paramatma, the supreme soul, that's witnessing. So in the core of your being, there are two entities, you and the super soul. So two birds on the tree. But what you have today is a perverted version of the two birds on the tree. What are the two birds on the tree of human society? One bird is called more, and the other bird's called better. You're always supposed to find those two birds together, more and better. But now people are wondering, what's happening? We've got more, but the bird about better seems to have flown away. Intelligent persons are wondering. More may not be better, but what else is there to do? You have to have more. The economy has to grow and grow and grow, even though some of us realize it's not going to be better. So what you call economic growth is actually uneconomic growth, because the so-called economic growth is destroying the planet. But you don't take that destruction into account. It's like if you spent every day of the coming year, 2023, eating sugary drinks, drinking sugary drinks, every day. And you think, well, I'm on top of my lifestyle. At the end of 2023, I'll add up all the money that I spent on sugary drinks, and that'll give you an accurate insight into my life. Will it? You're not paying attention to the costs of health. You just, in the world of accounting, you call this externalizing. You just look at the profit and loss and any ill effects caused to the environment, to health, that's externalized, that's pushed aside. So therefore you can't even see that in terms of economics, you're losing. But you just add up. I spent $1,000 last year on sugary drinks. That's accurate portrayal of my life. No. What about the effects on your health that you'll have to pay for? Oh, that's got nothing to do with my family balance sheet. So this is what goes on in the name of corporate development. You externalize all the costs of ill effects on the environment and on human beings, and you have a very narrow conception of profit and loss. But if you widen that conception, you'd see that you're practicing uneconomic growth. And that uneconomic growth is based on the notion that the earth has unlimited resources to present to you and unlimited space for you to dispose your waste into. So if you're actually going to be a materialist, you've got to face the music. You're living on a planet, according to the material conception, according to the proper material conception, you're living on a planet with limited resources and limited space for disposing of the waste once you transform those resources into consumer products. Where are more resources going to come from, according to the material conception? The earth has its limits, and where are you going to put all the waste? Send it into outer space? So you're operating with limitations. Still, there should be unlimited growth. Doesn't make sense. It's madness. Anyone with common sense, not burning with greed and lust, can understand that there are limitations. Actually, though, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam will tell you that because behind nature are conscious entities. If you change your consciousness, if human beings change their consciousness, nature can supply for many times the current population of the world. But we'll not get into that. We'll just think in an ordinary material way. And to think in an ordinary material way means to understand the earth has limited resources and there's limited space for disposing of waste. How can there be non-stop economic growth? So what to do? The so-called economic growth is uneconomic. It's causing such havoc. So human beings are actually flesh-covered devices for extracting and burning fossil fuels. That's the story of humanity in this day and age. So you could say, well, if there's not constant economic growth, what are we going to do? How about qualitative growth? And that's what the Bhakti texts are offering, qualitative growth. So much so that if human beings uplift their quality of consciousness, nature will respond accordingly. But as long as human beings are neglecting what is the real mission of human life, nature restricts its supplies. Because behind nature is consciousness. Now, if you can't even understand human consciousness, how are you going to understand consciousness behind nature, what to speak of the supreme consciousness? So therefore, we'll say, all right, let's be material. According to a material understanding, there's a limited supply of resources and a limited space to dispose of those resources. How can you just keep going on stressing economic growth, economic growth? A real materialist would figure that out. It's, as they say, it's not rocket science. But you don't even have real materialists these days. They can figure it out. Or they theoretically know, but they can't control themselves. You can have your international meetings in Rio de Janeiro, Copenhagen, Paris, every year or so. A meeting goes on some other place. Nothing changes because no one can control their mind and senses. No one wants to control their mind and senses. So again, what you call economic growth is actually uneconomic. Even from the material point of view, it doesn't make sense. Just like in the past 70 years, scientists have calculated that 80 billion metric tons of plastic have been produced. And of that 80 or so billion metric tons of plastic, 60 billion metric tons of plastic has been disposed somewhere in the past 70 years. So if you're going to be a dummy materialist, not a real materialist, but a dummy materialist, you just calculate, well, to make the plastic cost this much, we sold it off for that much, finished. That's accounting. What about the costs of the oceans being so loaded with plastic that by 2050, it's calculated that the biggest source of weight in the ocean will not be fish, it'll be plastic. And human beings are breathing plastic more and more. They're finding it lodged inside their bodies. But that's got nothing to do with our profit and loss. So if you're a real materialist, you see how non-sectarian and open-minded you are. You want to be a real materialist? We'll teach you how. You want to be a Vedic materialist? We'll teach you how. Vedic materialist understands that behind the functions of nature are conscious entities. If I get on the good side of those conscious entities behind the functions of nature, I get more from nature. That's good, intelligent materialism. What to speak of understanding the supreme consciousness. But no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how to be a dumb materialist, how to be a good materialist. You see how open-minded we are. So again, we're back to our starting point that our question is, do we have a real human civilization or do we not? Hearing about Prachyparudra equips us with determination, and also we're a bit envious. How can there be such a leader like that? And what do we have today? So remember Prachyparudra's determination and his recommendation from Lord Chaitanya's associates. They were afraid because Lord Chaitanya said, you talk like this, you keep asking me to meet him, you'll never see me again. Can you imagine the weight of that statement? Suppose your husband or wife said to you, if you say that again, you'll never see me. No. You'll never see me again. You would take it very seriously. What to speak of when Lord Chaitanya tells his associates, like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, you advocate that I see this king. You say it again, you'll never see me. I'm out of here. But the devotees, while afraid, still help to plan how Prachyparudra can see Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, remember, gave them a hint. He gave a hint to Ananda Roy. Because Prachyparudra has treated you, the devotees, so wonderfully, giving you full pension, letting you retire from political activities, it's certain Krishna will be merciful upon him. Hint. But meanwhile, Lord Chaitanya held to the tough line. No, no, no. And the devotees kept plotting. Wait till he's in kirtan, you'll get his audience. And then tomorrow we'll talk about the plot that when, during the Rath Yatra, when Lord Chaitanya rests in the garden, lost in ecstasy, they told Prataparuja, sneak into the garden, again dressed incognito, and start reciting Bhagavatam to him. He'll not recognize who you are, being lost in ecstasy, and he'll embrace you. So these are all devotees constantly plotting while being afraid. And remember the way they talk with Lord Chaitanya. Yes, but it's true that you don't meet kings, you don't see women, but the king is a great devotee. And Lord Chaitanya would respond, that's correct, he's a great devotee, but he's a king. So this is going on and on and on. All right, any questions? Yes.
Thank you very much for saying